Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again to talk about Hell's Kitchen, Season 22, Episode 2. So for starters, they had this challenge where the chefs had to go through the seafood bin to get live or real, scallops that are still in the shell, which I never knew that scallops originally came out of a shell. And I looked up their anatomy while I watched this episode and I thought, ew, that's really weird. You'd be surprised how weird and just, it's very weird. They have a weird body, a really weird anatomy. I thought it would be really weird to be a scallop. It would be such a strange existence, where your eyes are and everything. You should look it up. It's very, very peculiar, which is just another word for weird. I know. And so that automatically Gordon takes out this gooey duck, and automatically we got our first kind of WTF moment of the episode. It was kind of just a little cringeworthy joke. Someone on the women's team, I can't remember who it was, she said that the gooey duck puts all the guys to shame. And that just made me cringe so much because I was like, number one, how would you know what all the guys' dicks are like? And number two, why would you want to advertise that to Chef Gordon? And so I thought, it didn't really bother me, but I just thought oh, that was lame. Of course, someone had to make a dick joke about gooey ducks, and it just had to be someone on the women's team. I was really okay, whatever. But it really wasn't as bad as another joke from another chef later on in this episode, so let's get that clear. It was just kind of a joke. And so they made their scallops dishes just like I expected, to where the top 3 men and women on each team, they were basically the top 10 men and women. I mean, not the top 10, but the top men and women on each team for me personally. And so I thought it was funny that the top 3 men, those are exactly who I would say are the top 3. And the top 3 women, same thing. You had Sammy with her scallops sushi dish, which really looked delicious. I mean, that definitely looked like the most tasty dish of the night. And I've never even had scallop sushi before, but I would love to eat that dish. That was my favorite dish of the evening. And then also, on the women's team, it's just like I predicted in last video, where I said that even though the women's team is extremely strong, they're very, very strong, I had a feeling that they would bat heads because they're all such strong chefs and strong personalities. And right off the bat, you have Carmen from Miami. And she is the Jason of the women's team. She's very pretty. She is very, very, very pretty. But she, personality-wise, she is very similar to Jason on the men's team. And so when they were choosing the top 3 dishes, she was kind of oh, that one needs salt, that one needs salt, that one needs salt. She was very, very not full of herself really, but just overly stubborn and confident, I don't know, you got an off feeling from that. She's oh, that one's bad, that one's bad, that one's bad. And then her dish, I will admit though, her dish looked really good too. It had this nice creamy sauce, and I would have liked to have tried that personally. So she seems to be the villain of the women's team, and so I also found it interesting that you have a villain for the men's team and the women's team, and I wondered if the producers purposefully cast like a villain for both teams. Because, I mean, how does this happen? I mean, they're both almost exactly the same, except one of them is really, really beautiful, and the other one looks like he looks like fucking Will Poulter. He looks like Sid from Toy Story, kind of like, like he's related to Sid from Toy Story, and yeah. And then also right off the bat with the men's team, the Hogwarts guy made this weird jambalaya that didn't really look like a jambalaya very much, and it wasn't seasoned, and it was just kind of like an underwhelming dish, I guess. It looked okay, like it looked like a good dish to eat, I guess, but it didn't really look like a stunning Hell's Kitchen dish. And a lot of people were predicting that, his inexperience and his just complete naivete would get him sent home. And let's see what happens with that. So then on dinner service, I'm going to go through the men's team first and why they got kicked out. And then I'm going to go through the women's team and why they got kicked out. Because, yes, both teams got kicked out of the kitchen on the first night. That's pretty bad, guys. That's pretty That's a low point. That is, I guess it's only up from here. So on the men's team, Chef Jason, the first thing he does is send out raw lobster, and then he's given a second chance. Boom, raw lobster again. Oh, wait, before that, let's get to Jason's jokes. They were talking about, do we get to keep these cool knives that we're given, these chef's knives? And Jason's like, yeah, of course, we get to keep those, we get to keep this, we get to keep that, we get to keep the sexually transmitted diseases we get in Hell's Kitchen. And everyone was like, what? And then immediately after that, this was another thing that was weird, because that was a really, really cringeworthy joke. It was like watching fucking Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, when he's interacting with the girl at the campaign office. Well, he starts shit-talking the women's team, and he says, I hope I don't get sent to the women's team, and I hope I don't have to work underneath the women, because they're all, they're not very good. He's just such a scumball. He's such a fucking, ugh. And, all the men on the team were like, wait a second, there's some really talented chefs on the women's team. I mean, you can't get much better than the women's team on Hell's Kitchen this year. I mean, they are very, very good. Not really as a team, working together as a team, but they're very, very good individually. And so right off the bat with him, he's just continuing to stand out as like this villain who's going to stay there. Everyone on the team is going to despise him. And then finally he'll be put out of his misery and sent home at some point. And we'll all be glad as fans. But then we'll all kind of be like, oh, wait a second, but he was entertaining, so we lost that bit of entertainment. And on his first couple of dishes, on the first night service, he screwed up with this lobster and the lobster risotto. He undercooked it twice. But to be fair, he got better after that and he improved. So, it is what it is. Unfortunately, the Hogwarts guy, he got worse and worse. He sent out raw chicken, I think multiple times. And then the second time, it was very, very painful to listen to, because he said to his teammate, the Cuban guy, he said, oh, it's undercooked, it's fine, let's send it up. And the Cuban guy was like, wait a second, no, that's not fine at all. You never say that again. Like, are you serious? It's undercooked, but it's fine, we'll just send it up anyways. Like, what the hell? Like, was he expecting for fucking Harry Potter to jump out of the sky and, do a spell so that the dish would be good automatically? So then the men's team gets sent out. They did a terrible job, and Gordon called it pathetic himself. He was like, "This is the most pathetic opening night service I've ever seen, and if I knew that both teams would have done such a bad job, I never would have invited these celebrity guests." And I was like, you know what? Say what you will about how badly these teams did at cooking, but I feel like the celebrities, like, they were probably really entertained by watching that. The boxing guy, Oscar de La Hoya, sorry, it seemed like he was really enjoying things. So I really didn't think like that was appropriate, like for Gordon to say that. Like, honestly, if I was a celebrity, I'd love to just go to Hell's Kitchen and like watch the show happen in front of my eyes. Like, a lot of Hell's Kitchen fans would love to see that. And so, these celebrities, they're getting like a free show along with their possible dinner that they might get, So I felt like that was a little blown out of proportion. So the men got sent out. And then the women, they had chicken problems too. Like tonight was chicken, the chicken night. Everyone was having a problem cooking chicken, the easiest meat to cook basically. So with the women, you had Carmen. She was, I guess, not really communicating that well. She was really just focused on herself, like Jason. But she didn't send any raw meat, as she said later on in the episode. So, but there was this huge chicken mishap with LaToya, I think her name is, and then Sandra. LaToya told Sandra that she put chicken in the oven. And so when Chef Gordon called for the chicken, Sandra was like, wait a second, there's no chicken in the oven. There's no chicken anywhere. Where did LaToya cook the chicken? And it turned out she never cooked it to begin with. That was pretty bad. I mean, honestly, that was definitely like a being sent home mistake. That was being sent home level mistake right there. And then they even sent out raw chicken, and Gordon was like, you know what, I've had it. And then he was going to talk to them. And then one of the women on the team, she started nervous laughing. Where, if you guys have never heard of that before, when you're nervous and you laugh a lot and you're like a laughing kind of person, you can accidentally like laugh. And I say laugh in like quotes because it's not really even a laugh. It's like a reflex. It's like some sort of just a natural like response that happens. And she started laughing, and it was very uncomfortable to watch because Gordon, he was like, what are we doing here? I have a bunch of MasterChef contestants here. Like these people they're not taking it seriously. You got one guy on one team, and he's a Quidditch player, and he thinks that it's okay to send up raw chicken. And then on the other team, you got this girl laughing at me. He was just, you could tell that Gordon had it, and he was like, what was I thinking this season? Which the girls are great though. So, but he was like, get out. So both teams got sent out on the opening night of service. That's pretty bad. I was surprised by that, but then again, I told you guys, these are MasterChef contestants. These are not Hell's Kitchen people. So it didn't really surprise me as much, but it was still very, very like shocking because, getting kicked out of the kitchen is a big deal. I mean, it basically means you flunked the service. You didn't just get a D and lose or maybe like a C minus and lose. No, you got kicked out during the service. That's pretty bad. So on both teams, they did the same thing. They did this similar nomination thing where Jason, who they called the elephant in the room, he did not want to be nominated. And then on the women's team, the Carmen, she did not want to be nominated either. And so I thought that was interesting too, the fact that on both teams, both of the villains did not want to be put up for nomination. I mean, isn't that weird, guys? Isn't that like a little too coincidental? Because I didn't think that anyone on the women's team deserved to go home, honestly. And so I was glad when, they put up Sandra and LaToya. And LaToya, she did deserve to get nominated, but I didn't think she deserved to go home. So I was really glad that he didn't send anyone home from the women's team. That would have been very, very drastic. And I just think he was frustrated, and he wanted them to see how serious it was, and he wanted them to take the service more seriously because, it didn't seem like they were putting their best foot forward when both teams sent raw chicken. I mean, raw chicken on opening night, too. Like, you'd think that on opening night you would screw... To be fair, though, they did screw up a steak, I believe. I can't remember. It was either the men's team or the women's team. They gave him a raw steak. I think it was the women's team. But yeah, chicken. I don't know how you could screw up chicken. I mean, chicken is really easy. If it were pork, I would understand because pork chops, those are tough. We saw on MasterChef how hard it is to cook pork chops. But then on the men's team, they also did not nominate Jason, and I was really surprised that they didn't nominate him. I mean, if everyone on the team except for Jason thinks that Jason should be put up, why wouldn't they put up Jason? Who on that team honestly thought that it was appropriate to put up that Cuban guy over Jason? Like, the Cuban guy, he was just working with the Hogwarts guy. He wasn't the one undercooking the chicken. It was the Hogwarts guy. And so I really didn't understand why they nominated him over Jason. So, of course, Jason gets to skirt by another week, and who knows how long he's going to stay on this show. I hope not for very long for the sake of their team, but for the sake of entertainment, I'm kind of like, whatever, because, I don't know, like, he seems to be a very entertaining part of the show, is kind of like this clown. He's like this little clown in the background who's just like a complete joke, and it's like, ha ha ha, it's funny to laugh at him. The Hogwarts guy was funny to laugh at as well until he got sent home. When he got sent home, he was the only person to go home. And it was kind of depressing, actually, because he went out and at first he stood in front of Gordon like he expected like a hug or something. And Gordon was like, do you need a fucking broomstick? The door's right there. And then he left. And like, that was really sad. And then his last quote was like, I really hope in a couple of years you'll see something about me. I really hope in a couple of years I'll be somebody. It was a very depressing, like, sad outro for his character. And it was just the inexperience, though. It was like he's this MasterChef contestant in Hell's Kitchen, and it's just not up to par. You know what I mean? I mean, MasterChef contestants would not make it in Hell's Kitchen. That's why in MasterChef it was such a disaster when they did that Hell's Kitchen episode near the end of the season. And then I really did think, too, that Gordon's final quote was a little rude, too. Gordon said something about, like, Chef Tad thinks that Quidditch is real and that he's a real chef, and neither are true. And I was like, oh, like that was kind of rude, like to say that he's not a real chef. I mean, he is a real chef. He made it onto Hell's Kitchen. So, I mean, you can't say that he's not a real chef. I mean, I don't care if it's Gordon Ramsay who said that or whoever. Like, he is a real chef, quote unquote. So, I think he just has a lot to learn, you know. It's like, it felt like they just brought him on there to laugh at him for being a Quidditch player to begin with. So, but they brought him on there, and so he is a real chef. I mean, I didn't like that, but I just took it as like Gordon taking the opportunity to shit on Quidditch because he doesn't consider it a real sport, which it's a real sport, I guess, but yeah. So I would give the episode an A-. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will say that the women's team, it seems like they are going to continue to fight with each other because these personalities are so strong, and so they're all going to just fight over like little things like that, like in the challenge. And I really feel like their team is going to suffer the whole season because of how individualistic they are. And then I also think that the men's team is a little meh because it seems like it's everyone against Jason, but they're going to continue. Excuse me, I don't know what that was. Sorry. But it seems like they're going to keep Jason there and keep him there and keep him there. So, you know, who knows how long that'll be for. But I really can't wait for next week. It looks like Gordon might actually get sent to the hospital for some reason, which I think that might just be for TV. Oh yeah. I should also mention that there was a really good part of the episode where Chef Jay came back to the men's dorms, and he said that was the worst fucking dinner service I've ever seen. And Gordon says to get 2 nominations. And I thought that was funny because, you know, Christina didn't go back to the women's dorm. And so I really like that touch that Chef Jay went back and he just roasted the men. He roasted the men's team, and he was like, yeah, that was pathetic. So, overall, once again, great episode. Can't wait for next week. Now, please like this video, comment, and tell me what you thought of the episode. I think that next week it is a trick. I think next week that the women's team will lose and that someone from their team will get sent home. But, you know, who knows? Who knows? And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more Hell's Kitchen reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.